Welcome, fellow stargazers. Congratulations, you've taken another step towards the realization. This is the third and final part of the What's the Greatest Invention video series. Let's just keep this one a bit more calm. No fancy intros, no loud music, just me talking to you. You know, I've always wanted to make videos for YouTube ever since I was in high school. But all this time I wasn't sure what kind of content I was gonna post. Only recently I discovered my interest in science and philosophy and thought I might as well make videos regarding the same. This video series was one of the first ideas I had, and to finally be able to turn my thoughts into vivid moving pixels on your screens feels rewarding, to say the least. If you followed this series since part 1, you know all the things we've talked of. In part 1, we talked about some groundbreaking inventions and how they've affected our world. In part 2, we talked about mathematics and how it breaks the general definitions of discoveries and inventions. But while we talked about all this stuff, we more or less lost track of the question we started with. What's the greatest invention? As in, a singular most important invention whose importance straight up outweighs the importance of any other invention. Well, as it turns out, it might not be very easy to answer this question. As we've noticed in this series itself, all these inventions are very intricately interwoven into each other. We wouldn't have invented printing press had there been no paper. Modern cars wouldn't even be a thing if we had no engine. Transportation devices in general wouldn't even exist if the wheel wasn't invented. Bulbs would be rendered useless if we never had electricity. But electricity would be pretty obsolete too if we had no electric devices to put it to use. One invention essentially makes room for more inventions, and this process keeps going on for centuries. The examples are plenty. It's all interconnected. And while some inventions may play a bigger role than the others, that in no way should be enough to disregard the importance of the other inventions. This was a problem I came across as I was researching for this video. But I had to somehow find an answer to this question. What was wrong in my research? I had looked so hard to find an answer. And then I realized that we often try too hard to find answers, but sometimes things lie right in front of our eyes and we don't even realize it. Originally thought of and started in the 1960s, the first mechanical computer was thought of and developed by Charles Babbage. Almost every civilization had thought of and put into practice its own versions of medicines and treatment. Light bulb, as we know it today, is the result of the thought process of generations of people. It is believed that the thought of a circular structure that eased mobility might have come from observing round tree logs as they rolled on their own down a slope. Thought. That was an interesting answer I came up with after hours of research. A thought is essentially a creation, an invention of your brain. And if thought is really an invention, it certainly is one of the most mysteriously amazing ones. How exactly your brain generates it is still unclear, although a lot of models exist that try to explain the same. In 2015, a research was conducted at the Harvard Department of Psychology to try and understand the process of formation of a thought. This novel research was so groundbreaking that Steve Pinker, who is a cognitive scientist, linguist, and psychologist himself, called it the most important finding in cognitive neuroscience in many years. Stephen Franklin and Joshua Green pioneered the research. Their approach was to use a functional magnetic resonance imaging to track the changes in blood flows in various individuals as they were given different lines to read. This change in blood flow closely correlates with the changes in the neural activities of the brain. Your brain, more specifically, the cerebral part of your brain, is divided into certain regions called lobes. one frontal, two parietal, two temporal, and one occipital lobe. The left superior temporal lobe, which would lie close to your left ear, has a region called the Wernicke's area. Discovered by Carl Wernicke in 1874, this part of the brain plays a role in language comprehension and production. The data collected from Franklin and Green's research showed that the Wernicke's area seems to have certain subparts devoted to deciphering a sentence's meaning and generating a thought out of it. These subparts seem to work by dividing a sentence into various aspects like who did it, what was done, and to whom it was done. Take an example to understand this. You watched my video. I would assume you were able to visualize the situation in your head. And that's because this sentence can be divided into the three subparts mentioned earlier. Here, you are the one doing the action. The action is to watch the video, and the patient of the action is the video being watched. The Wernicke's area of your brain was able to put together all of this data and a thought was generated. This process is similar to how a computer works. Many scientists argue that your brain treats a thought as the result of an algebraic equation. To your brain, a sentence is just an algebraic equation consisting of different variables. Provided those variables, and it generates a thought. And it's not always necessary that this input of variables comes from the outside. A lot of the times, your brain can use the memory of things it has seen or heard in the past and use those as an internal source of the variables. This is what happens in case of daydreaming or intense thinking, or every time you think how you could have won that argument with better points. Your brain cannot think about something it hasn't heard of before, just like how an algebraic equation cannot be solved without knowing the variables. So, even if you come up with an idea you never had before, it is in fact inspired by something your brain already knows about. Franklin and Green's research was published in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of the Sciences and is one of the most impressive findings that explains thought generation. Your brain is indeed an incredible biomachine, and this thing we call thought is indeed your brain's greatest invention. Take a moment and look around you. Every invention you see, whether it was or wasn't mentioned in this series, has come to existence because of that initial thought that the brain invented. The fan above your head, the device you have your eyes on, every new dish you've enjoyed, every ship ever built, every weapon ever forged, every bullet ever fired, every medicine ever consumed, every melody ever composed, every painting ever made, every dream house ever built, every bomb that could destroy that house, every new story ever written, every rocket ever launched, every theory ever proposed, every weapon of mass destruction, every pixel ever loaded, and every video ever watched. And everything else. You get the picture. They've all come to existence because of a thought. It's honestly fascinating just how much humans are capable of. We fail 1,000 times but get back up every time because that curiosity in us simply won't let our hopes die. No matter if we burn, no matter if we get hanged, no matter if we get electrocuted, we have always come back stronger. Every invention you see and use is in a way reflective of this very persistence of humanity. A persistence to not simply rot away, but to be remembered for good. Hope arises from curiosity. Curiosity is aided by persistence. Persistence is fueled by will, and will sprouts from a thought. A thought is like a magic spell, slowly brewing inside your brain. More ingredients keep adding with time until the spell is ready to be casted and bring forth its magic. So, the next time you bring a thought in your head, don't just throw it away. Instead, take a sip. But who knows, maybe that thought of yours can go on to make the greatest invention, to be the greatest invention. And until next time, chase brilliance.